I stared at the divorce papers on the mahogany desk, my husband's expectant face hovering in my peripheral vision, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "Well," Marcus said, his tone dripping with false patience. "Are you going to read them or just sit there?" I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. Why would it? I'd already died once because of this man. "Lily, don't you want to at least?" My sister Vanessa started from where she perched on Marcus's desk, her manicured fingers wrapped possessively around his coffee mug. Our mother's antique mug, the one from my trousseau. "No," I said simply and signed my name with a flourish across every flagged page. 5 signatures in total. I didn't read a single word. Marcus blinked, clearly thrown off script. You're not even going to look at the terms?" I stood, smoothing down my Chanel skirt. "Why would I? I trust you completely, darling." The sarcasm sailed right over his head. It always did. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, though. She'd always been the smarter one, which was precisely why she'd been so dangerous. Past tense. Because this time I was smarter. "Right, well." Marcus cleared his throat, clearly unsettled by how easy this was. In another timeline, my first life, I'd sobbed and begged and pled. I'd asked him to reconsider. I'd prostrated myself at his feet while Vanessa watched with barely concealed glee. "My lawyer will file these today." "Perfect," I said brightly. "I'll have my lawyer collect my copies." "Your lawyer?" Vanessa's voice sharpened. "Of course. Did you think I wouldn't have representation?" I tilted my head, letting confusion color my features. "Marcus always said I should have my own counsel for important matters." "Don't you remember, darling?" He didn't remember saying that because he'd never said it. But he nodded anyway, too eager to be rid of me to question anything. I walked out of his office, the office that had been my father's, in the building my grandfather built, and I didn't look back. My phone buzzed 3 times before I reached the elevator. I waited until the doors closed, and I was alone before I looked. Unknown. Number, documents received. The switch was seamless. Unknown number. He signed them this morning, thinking they were drafts. Unknown number. You're brilliant. I allowed myself a small smile as the elevator descended. 23 floors. 23 floors in the building that Marcus thought he'd already won. 23 floors that were about to become mine again. My phone rang as I stepped into the lobby. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew exactly who it was. "Yes?" "You fucking bitch!" A man's voice, high with panic. "What did you do? What the fuck did you just sign?" Marcus's lawyer, right on schedule. "I signed divorce papers," I said calmly, nodding at the security guard. Robert, who'd worked here since I was 16 and who'd received a very generous Christmas bonus last month along with explicit instructions. The ones my husband presented to me. "Those weren't, you switched." "I have no idea what you're talking about," I said, my voice sweet as poison. "But perhaps you should read documents before you have your clients sign them. Good luck with everything, Mr. Patterson." I hung up as he started screaming again. Behind me, I heard the elevator ding. Heard Marcus's expensive shoes hit the marble. Heard him shout my name. I kept walking. Robert stepped smoothly into Marcus's path. "I'm sorry, sir, but you're no longer authorized to exit the building without Ms. Chen's explicit permission." "What? I own this building." "No, sir," Robert said, and I could hear the smile in his voice even as I pushed through the revolving doors into the bright afternoon sun. "You don't." The first time I died, I was 28 years old and weighed 93 pounds. I died alone in a studio apartment in the worst part of the city, the kind of place where sirens wailed every night and the heat only worked half the time. I died curled on a mattress on the floor because I couldn't afford a bed frame. I died with $432 in my bank account and a disconnection notice from the electric company on my kitchen counter. I died of a broken heart, technically. That's what the coroner would have written if anyone had cared enough to request an autopsy. Stress-induced cardiomyopathy, Takotsubo syndrome. Your heart literally breaks from grief and trauma until it just stops working. But really, I died because of Marcus Chen. The memories of that first life are crystal clear, sharp as shattered glass. They cut me every time I revisit them, but I force myself to remember, to never forget what they did to me. I was 23 when I married Marcus, young, naive, and desperate to please my parents. My father, Richard Whitmore, had built Whitmore Industries from the ground up, manufacturing, real estate, tech investments, worth $500 million by the time I was born. I was his only child from his first marriage, and he'd always promised me that the company would be mine someday. "You're a Whitmore," he'd say, ruffling my hair when I was small. "This is your legacy." Then he married Catherine when I was 15. She came with Vanessa, who was my age and everything I wasn't. Petite, bubbly, charismatic. I was tall, awkward, bookish. I loved spreadsheets and quarterly reports. Vanessa loved parties and people. Catherine immediately began her campaign to position Vanessa as the rightful heir. "It's not that Lily isn't capable," she'd say, her voice dripping with false concern. "It's just that she's so serious, so cold." The board would never warm to her. But Dad had always resisted. Until Marcus. Marcus Chen came from a good family, old money that had mostly evaporated by his generation. He was handsome, charming, Harvard-educated. He worked in investment banking and seemed fascinated by me when we met at a charity gala. "You're nothing. Like other girls," he'd said on our third date. "You actually have substance." I fell for it, for him, hook, line, and sinker. He proposed after 6 months. The wedding was the event of the season, covered in magazines, attended by everyone who mattered. I wore a Vera Wang dress and my grandmother's diamonds. I was deliriously happy. The honeymoon was in Bali. That's where the mask first slipped. "Don't order dessert," he said on our third night, his hand tight on my wrist under the table. "You're getting chubby." I wasn't. I was 5'9" and weighed 130, but I stopped ordering dessert. "Why do you talk so much in meetings?" he asked after I gave a presentation to the board. "You sound shrill when you get excited." I started speaking more quietly, less frequently. "Your father thinks you should step back from operations," he mentioned casually one morning. "Focus on being a good wife. I can handle the business side." I should have questioned it. Should have asked Dad directly, but Marcus showed me emails, faked, I know now, that seemed to confirm it. And I wanted to be a good wife, a good daughter, a good person. So I stepped back. Marcus stepped up. He became COO within a year. My father seemed thrilled to have a son who understood business. Catherine reinforced it constantly, Marcus is such an asset. Marcus has such vision. Aren't you lucky Lily found him? Vanessa and I had never been close, but we'd been cordial. That changed after my wedding. She started dropping by our penthouse apartment when Marcus was home, wearing increasingly revealing outfits. She'd touch his arm, laugh at his jokes, ask his advice on everything. I told myself I was being paranoid, jealous, unfair. Then, 3 years into my marriage, I came home early from a charity luncheon and found them in my bed. Not just having sex. Anyone could have No, they were tender with each other. Marcus touched Vanessa the way he used to touch me in our first month together, before I'd failed to be whatever he wanted. He looked at her with genuine affection. I stood in the doorway and felt my entire world collapse. Lily. Marcus didn't even have the grace to look ashamed. He sat up, draped a sheet over Vanessa's naked body. "We need to talk." "You're sleeping with my sister?" "Half-sister," Vanessa corrected as if that mattered. "And honestly, Lily, you can't be surprised. You're not exactly passionate." I wasn't passionate, because Marcus had spent 3 years training me not to be, training me to be quiet, small, undemanding, and now he was punishing me for succeeding. "I want a divorce," I said. "Great." Marcus stood, completely naked, completely unashamed. "My lawyer will draw up papers." That should have been my first clue. That should have been when I hired my own lawyer, protected my assets, fought back. But I was still so beaten down, so convinced it was all my fault. The papers arrived a week later. I signed them in a days, barely reading the terms. I didn't understand most of the legal language anyway. Marcus had always handled that sort of thing, only after I'd signed, after they were filed, after Marcus's lawyer shook his hand in congratulation, did I realize what I'd done. The prenup I'd signed before the wedding had been very clear. In the event of divorce, we each kept what we'd brought to the marriage. Simple, fair, except the divorce papers I signed superseded the prenup. They included clauses about fair distribution of marital assets and recognition of contribution to household and business operations. Legal jargon that translated to, Marcus got half of everything, including my inheritance, including my shares in Whitmore Industries, including the trust fund my grandmother had left me. My father didn't fight it. "You signed the papers, Lily," he said, his voice cold. "This is your own fault." Catherine had already convinced him that I was unstable, emotional, not fit to run the company. She had emails I'd supposedly sent, bitter, unhinged rants that I never wrote but couldn't prove I hadn't. She had testimony from friends who claimed I'd been drinking too much, acting erratically. It was all lies. But it was effective. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Marcus married Vanessa in a ceremony twice as lavish as ours had been. My father walked her down the aisle. Catherine wept tears of joy. I wasn't invited. A year after that, my father had a stroke. Not fatal, but severe enough that he needed to step back from the company. The board voted unanimously to name Marcus as CEO. My father changed his will, left everything to Catherine, to distribute as she saw fit, and Catherine, of course, left everything to Vanessa. I contested it. I hired a lawyer with the last of my money and I fought. But Marcus had been meticulous. Every asset had been properly transferred. Every legal avenue had been sealed off. The judge dismissed my case. "Ms. Whitmore," he said, peering at me over his glasses, "you signed away your rights. That was your choice." I lost my apartment. Lost my car, lost everything. I found work as a barista, then lost that job when I kept missing shifts due to panic attacks, found work as a retail clerk, lost that when I broke down crying in front of customers, my health deteriorated, stress, depression, malnutrition. I couldn't afford therapy or medication. Couldn't afford anything. I thought about suicide, planned it even, but I was too much of a coward to go through with it, so instead my heart just stopped. On a Tuesday morning in February when I was 28 years old and completely alone. The last thing I remembered thinking was, I should have read those papers. I woke up gasping, my heart hammering, my hand clutching at my chest. Silk sheets, Egyptian cotton, a pillow that cost more than my last month's rent. I sat up slowly, looking around the darkened room. My room. My bedroom in the penthouse apartment I'd shared with Marcus. The one with the city view and the ensuite bathroom with the heated floors. A nightmare. It had been a nightmare. Except it wasn't. Even as I tried to convince myself I knew better. The memories were too vivid, too detailed. The pain too real. I stumbled to the bathroom and turned on the lights. The woman in the mirror was 25 years old, 3 years younger than when I'd died. Her face was fuller, healthier. Her hair was glossy and professionally colored. She wore a silk nightgown that cost $400. I touched my face, my neck, my chest, feeling my heartbeat strong and steady underneath. Real. This was real. I'd gone back. Somehow, impossibly, I'd been given a second chance. The bathroom door opened. Marcus walked in, already dressed in his suit for work. "You're up early," he said, not looking at me as he reached for his toothbrush. 3 years into our marriage, I knew this day, remembered it with painful clarity. This was the day I'd come home early and found him with Vanessa. This was the day my life had ended, even though my heart had kept beating for another 3 years. "Can't sleep," I managed. He grunted, squeezing toothpaste. "Well, try not to be weird at the charity luncheon today. Catherine says you've been embarrassing lately." In my first life, that comment had made me cry. I'd apologized profusely, promised to do better. Now, I just stared at his reflection. "Lily, are you listening to me?" "Of course," I said softly. I'll be perfect." He nodded, satisfied, and left me standing there. I waited until I heard the front door close. Then I opened my phone, a newer model than the one I'd die clutching, and started making calls. First, to a lawyer. Not our family lawyer, not anyone Marcus knew. A shark I'd read about in a business magazine. famous for representing women in high-stakes divorces. Margaret Chen, the voice answered, crisp and professional. Ms. Chen, my name is Lily Whitmore. I need representation for a divorce, and I need you to keep it completely confidential. I charge $500 an hour and require a $50,000 retainer. I'll wire it today. How soon can we meet? A pause. How soon do you need to meet? Today, right now if possible. And Ms. Chen? My husband is going to try to destroy me. He's probably already started. I need someone who can fight dirty. Mrs. Whitmore, Margaret said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. You've called the right person. The charity luncheon was for children's literacy. Ironic, since most of the women attending hadn't read anything more challenging than a magazine in years. I played my part perfectly, smiled, nodded, made small talk about the weather and the latest Broadway shows, let Catherine subtly criticize my outfit. Honey, that color washes you out, without reacting. I left at exactly 2 o'clock, citing a headache. In my first life, I'd left at 2:15, which meant I'd walked in on Marcus and Vanessa mid-act. This time, I wanted to arrive just before. I took a taxi instead of my car, paying cash so there'd be no record. I used my spare key to enter quietly, slipped off my heels in the foyer. I heard them before I saw them. Vanessa's theatrical moans. So fake. Had Marcus really fallen for that? And his grunts of effort. I pulled out my phone and started recording as I walked down the hall. Pushed open the bedroom door. This time, I didn't announce myself. I just filmed. 30 seconds of clear, unmistakable footage of my husband fucking my half-sister in our marriage bed. Marcus saw me first. Lily, Jesus Christ, what are you? I stopped recording. Continue, I said calmly. Don't stop on my account. Vanessa grabbed for the sheets. Lily, this isn't what? Isn't you fucking my husband? Because that's exactly what it looks like. I smiled. I'm going to a hotel. My lawyer will be in touch. I left before they could respond, took another taxi to the Four Seasons and checked into a suite. Then I called Margaret Chen. I have video evidence of adultery, I said without preamble. Sending it to you now. New York is a no-fault divorce state, Margaret reminded me. Adultery doesn't affect the settlement. No, but it affects public opinion. And I'm going to need public opinion on my side for what comes next. Over the next week, I met with Margaret daily. We went through everything, my prenup, my assets, my father's company structure. She brought in a forensic accountant, a private investigator, and a PR specialist. Your husband has been very careful, Margaret told me after our third meeting. He's been moving money, setting up offshore accounts. I think he's been planning this divorce for over a year. 2 years, I said. He's been planning it since before he started sleeping with Vanessa. This was always the goal. You sound very certain. I am. I leaned forward. Margaret, I need you to trust me. I can't explain how, but I know exactly what Marcus is planning. I know which accounts he's using, which shell companies he's set up, which board members he's compromised, and I know how to stop him. She studied me for a long moment. All right, what do you need? First, I need to transfer my liquid assets into a trust that Marcus can't touch. Second, I need documentation of every fraudulent transaction he's made. Third, I need to secretly record him admitting to his plans. And fourth, I smiled, I need to rewrite some divorce papers. Marcus didn't file for divorce immediately. He thought he had time, thought he could continue his campaign to isolate me, ruin my reputation, and steal my inheritance at his leisure. He didn't know I was already 10 steps ahead. The first thing I did was meet with my father, alone, without Catherine or Marcus knowing. Dad, I need to talk to you about the company. He looked up from his paperwork, irritated. Lily, I don't have time for your drama. No drama. I just want to understand something. When you made Marcus COO, did you also give him signing authority on the acquisition account? Dad frowned. Of course. He needs it to move quickly on opportunities. And does the board review those acquisitions? Monthly. Why are you asking? Just curious. I smiled. Actually, I was thinking of getting more involved again. Maybe sitting in on some board meetings? Catherine thinks that's a bad idea. Catherine isn't a Whitmore. Something flickered in his eyes. For just a moment, I saw my father, the man who had taught me to read balance sheets when I was 12, who'd brought me to board meetings as a teenager, who'd once promised me the world. Then it was gone. We'll discuss it later. But I'd planted the seed. The private investigator Margaret hired was worth every penny. Within a week, he had documentation of Marcus's affair with Vanessa. Not just the current one, but evidence they'd been sleeping together for over a year before I caught them. He had photos, hotel receipts, credit card statements. He also had something more interesting, evidence that Marcus had been systematically looting Whitmore Industries. Fake vendors, inflated contracts, kickbacks. He'd stolen close to $20 million over 3 years, moving it into accounts under shell company names. He'd been clever about it, but not clever enough. "This is fraud," Margaret said, laying out the evidence on her conference table. "We could send him to prison." "Not yet," I said. "I need him to feel secure, to think he's winning. Otherwise, he'll lawyer up and we'll never get what we need." What I needed was for Marcus to present me with his carefully crafted divorce papers, the ones that would strip me of everything. And to do that, I needed him to think I was broken. So I played the role. Showed up to family dinners, red-eyed and quiet. Let Catherine make snide comments about my appearance. Watched Vanessa touch Marcus's arm and didn't react. "Lily's finally realizing what she lost," I heard Catherine tell someone at a cocktail party. "Such a shame she didn't appreciate Marcus when she had him." Perfect. 2 weeks after I caught them, Marcus asked me to come to his office for a conversation. I wore no makeup, dressed in old jeans and a sweater, let my hair hang limp and unwashed, played every inch the devastated wife. "Lily," he said, trying to sound kind, remorseful, "I think we need to talk about our marriage." "I know about Vanessa," I said quietly. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you." Such obvious lies. "But I think we both know this hasn't been working for a long time. You're not happy. I'm not happy. So you want a divorce? I think it's for the best. For both of us." He slid a folder across the desk. "I've had my lawyer draw up papers. Fair terms, I promise. You'll be taken care of." I stared at the folder, letting my hands shake. Can I think about it?" "Of course, take your time." I took the folder and left, head down, shoulders hunched. In the car, I called Margaret. "I have them. Bring them to my office. Don't open them." The papers were exactly as I remembered. Worse, actually, since I understood the legal language now. Marcus hadn't just wanted half of everything. He wanted everything. The terms were structured so that I would walk away with virtually nothing. My inheritance would be considered marital assets, since it had been commingled with our joint accounts. My shares in the company would be split based on contribution to growth, which his accountants had calculated as 80% his, 20% mine. Even the penthouse apartment would be his, even my jewelry, even my car. "This is unconscionable," Margaret said flatly. "No judge would enforce this." "They don't need a judge to enforce it. They need me to sign it." "Which you won't." "No, but I need him to think I will." I smiled. "How long would it take you to draft different papers? Papers that give me everything?" Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Papers that give you what you're entitled to, you mean?" "No, papers that give me everything. The apartment, the assets, full ownership of my shares, plus compensation for his theft and fraud." I laid out the documentation of Marcus's embezzlement. "He's been stealing from my father's company. When this comes out, he'll be facing criminal charges. The divorce papers should include a clause that waives those charges in exchange for a full financial settlement." "You want him to sign away everything to avoid prison?" "Exactly. He'll never sign papers like that." "He will if he doesn't know what he's signing." I leaned back in my chair. "Can you match the formatting exactly? Same font, same layout, Same cover sheet, so that at a quick glance they look identical to his version? Margaret's eyes gleamed. You want to switch them? He's expecting me to sign without really reading, because that's what I did last time. I caught myself. I mean, that's what he thinks I'll do. I'm not exactly known for my attention to detail. Because he spent years training you to defer to him on anything complicated. Right. So he won't double check my copies carefully. He'll just verify his lawyer has the signed documents and file them. This is risky, Margaret warned. If he catches on, he won't. I know him. He's arrogant and he's in a hurry to marry Vanessa. He won't look twice. It took Margaret's team 3 days to draft the counterpapers and match the formatting perfectly. They were works of art, externally identical to Marcus's version, but with every clause reversed in my favor. I spent those 3 days setting up the rest of my plan. Transferred money into protected trusts. Secured evidence of Marcus's fraud in multiple locations. Met with board members I knew I could trust. The old guard who'd worked with my grandfather, who remembered when Whitmore Industries was about more than profit margins. Marcus Chen has been stealing from this company, I told them, showing them the documentation. I'm going to stop him, but I need to know you'll support me when the time comes. They would. They'd never liked Marcus anyway, too slick, too hungry. They'd only tolerated him because my father had insisted. On the 4th day, I called Marcus. I'll sign the papers, I said, my voice small and defeated. I can't look at them. Can't read through all the details of our marriage ending. Can you just show me where to sign? Of course, Lily. He sounded so pleased with himself. Come by my office tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning. Perfect. That night I barely slept. Kept going over the plan, checking for flaws, anticipating problems. Margaret had assured me the switch would work. The papers were perfect copies, down to the coffee stain Marcus's lawyer had left on page 3 of the original. You're sure about this? She asked me one final time. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The next morning I dressed carefully, not too put together. Marcus needed to think I was barely holding it together, but not so disheveled that I'd attract extra scrutiny. I went for grief chic, black slacks, a simple gray blouse, minimal makeup. Vanessa was in Marcus's office when I arrived. Of course she was. She wore a red dress that was far too sexy for a business setting, and she'd draped herself over his desk like a cat. Lily, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I'm so sorry about all this. No, you're not, I thought. But I just nodded, eyes on the floor. The papers were laid out on Marcus's desk. His version, or what he thought was his version. Margaret's assistant had broken into his office last night and made the switch while the cleaning crew was working. It had cost me $20,000 in bribes, but it had been worth it. Just sign where the flags are, Marcus said, handing me a pen. My pen, a Mont Blanc he'd given me for our first anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. I took the pen, let my hand shake. Lily, you don't have to, Vanessa started. Yes, I do. I didn't look up, just signed. 5 pages, 5 signatures. I didn't read a single word. When I finished, I stood and placed the pen down carefully. I hope you'll both be very happy. Marcus relaxed, actually smiled. Thank you for being reasonable about this. I walked out without answering, made it to the elevator, made it to the lobby, made it to my car. Then I drove to Margaret's office and started laughing. Couldn't stop laughing until I was nearly crying. Did it work? Margaret demanded. Perfectly, I gasped. He has no idea. His lawyer will file them today. He's already scheduled it. I checked the court calendar. Good. I wiped my eyes. How long until they realize? The papers get stamped and entered into the system immediately, but they probably won't. Read them carefully until his lawyer prepares the press release. Margaret checked her watch. I'd guess about 4 hours. I'll wait here. I didn't have to wait 4 hours. I barely had to wait 2. My phone rang at 11:47 a.m. Unknown number, I answered. Yes? You fucking bitch. What did you do? What the fuck did you just sign? Marcus's lawyer, screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. I signed divorce papers, I said calmly. The ones my husband presented to me. Those weren't, you switched. I have no idea what you're talking about. But perhaps you should read documents before you have your clients sign them. My lawyer certainly does. Speaking of which, Ms. Chen is right here. Would you like to speak with her? I put the phone on speaker. Mr. Patterson, Margaret said smoothly. I trust you've reviewed the divorce settlement? This is fraud. She switched the documents. Are you accusing my client of tampering with legal documents you prepared? That's a serious allegation. I hope you have evidence. The papers we drafted, these aren't. My understanding is that your client presented papers to mine, my client signed them, and your firm filed them with the court. Everything was done properly. Or are you suggesting your firm filed documents without reviewing them first? Silence. Because, of course, that's exactly what they'd done. They'd been so confident in Marcus's control over me that they hadn't double-checked anything. The papers are filed, Margaret continued. They're legally binding. Your client signed them 2 hours ago in his office in front of a witness, Ms. Vanessa Whitmore, I believe, and my client signed them after being given ample time to review them, with her own legal counsel present. That was a lie. I'd signed before meeting with Margaret, but Patterson didn't know that. We'll contest this, he blustered. On what grounds? Your client will need to prove fraud, which means proving my client somehow accessed your documents, created forgeries, and swapped them without anyone noticing. In a corporate office building with security cameras and multiple witnesses. That seems unlikely, especially since my client has been staying at the Four Seasons for the past 2 weeks and hasn't once entered that building. Another lie, but a good one. We have the original documents, Patterson tried. Do you? The court has the originals, the ones your client signed. Everything else is just drafts. Prove which version was which. She was right. Margaret had made sure of it. The only papers that existed with Marcus's signature were the ones that destroyed him. Mr. Patterson, Margaret said, her voice sharp. I suggest you advise your client to accept the settlement, because if this goes to litigation, my client will be filing criminal charges for embezzlement, fraud, and corporate theft. We have extensive documentation of your client's activities, the post. Settlement includes a waiver of those charges. But that waiver disappears the moment he contests the divorce. You can't. I can. We can. And we will. She smiled at me. Have a nice day, Mr. Patterson. She hung up. I stared at her. Is it really done? It's really done. As of this moment, you own the penthouse apartment, all of the marital assets, and your full share of Whitmore Industries. Marcus Chen owns nothing but debt and a very expensive lawyer who's probably about to quit. I started laughing again, couldn't help it. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but I knew who it was. You're going to regret this. I texted back, I don't think I will. Then I blocked the number. Marcus tried to fight it. Of course he did. His first move was to appeal to my father, showing up at the house in tears, claiming I'd tricked him, that I'd forged documents, that I was mentally unstable. She's been acting crazy, he insisted. Catherine, you've seen it. Vanessa, tell them. It's true, Vanessa chimed in. She's been really erratic lately. But I'd prepared for this too. Is that so? I walked into the living room where they were having their little meeting. I'd let myself in with my old key. After all, I'd grown up in this house. Erratic like catching my husband cheating on me with my half-sister? Or erratic like hiring a lawyer to protect my interests? Lily. Dad stood up, clearly uncomfortable. Marcus says you signed fraudulent divorce papers. No, Dad, Marcus signed fraudulent divorce papers. He thought he was stealing my inheritance. Instead, he signed away everything he'd stolen from me. And from you. From me. I handed him a folder. Marcus has been embezzling from Whitmore Industries for 3 years. $20 million laundered through shell companies and offshore accounts. It's all documented. My lawyer has already contacted the board. Marcus went white. That's a lie. Is it? Then you won't mind if we audit those accounts? I smiled. I have the account numbers right here. Shall we call the bank? Catherine grabbed Dad's arm. Richard, you can't seriously believe. Shut up, Catherine. Dad's voice was cold as ice. He was reading through the documents, his face getting darker with each page. Marcus, is this true? I can explain. Did you steal from my company? It's more complicated than mine. Did you steal from my company? Marcus looked at Vanessa, at Catherine, at me. Looking for an ally, finding none. I needed capital for investments, he said finally. I was going to pay it back. You were going to pay back $20 million? Dad laughed, but there was no humor in it. With what money? You don't have any money. You never did. That's why you married my daughter in the first place, isn't it? Silence. Get out, Dad said quietly. Get out of my house. Richard, be reasonable. I said get out, Dad roared. And Marcus, consider yourself fired. Security will escort you from the building tomorrow morning. If you attempt to enter Whitmore Industries property after that, I'll have you arrested. Marcus looked at me, pure hatred in his eyes. You planned this. Yes, I said simply. I did. How? How did you know about the accounts, the shell companies? Maybe I'm not as stupid as you thought. I walked closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. You spent 3 years making me feel worthless, Marcus. Telling me I wasn't smart enough, capable enough, good enough. You almost destroyed me. Almost. But I'm a Whitmore, and Whitmores don't stay down. He grabbed my arm, squeezed hard enough to bruise. I'll make you pay for this. No, I said, twisting free. You won't. Because if you come near me again, all that documentation goes to the police. Right now, you're just fired and broke. Push me and you'll be in prison. Dad had security escort Marcus out. Vanessa and Catherine tried to slink away, but I stopped them. Not so fast. Vanessa turned, her face pale. Lily, I'm sorry about Marcus, but sorry you fucked my husband? Or sorry you got caught? I pulled out my phone, played the video I'd recorded. 30 seconds of her and Marcus in my bed. You know what's interesting? The timestamp on this video. It was recorded at 2:03 p.m. Do you remember what you were supposed to be doing at 2:03 p.m.? She swallowed hard. You were supposed to be at a Whitmore Industries board meeting, representing Catherine's interests, but you weren't there. You were fucking your sister's husband instead, while on the company payroll. That's not corporate theft, I said cheerfully. Fraud, misappropriation of company time and resources. Should I keep going? You wouldn't. Try me. I looked at Catherine. You've been pushing for Vanessa to take a bigger role in the company, representing your interests since you married Dad. But here's the thing. You're not a Whitmore. You never will be. And your daughter is a thief and a whore. Catherine slapped me. I didn't flinch, just smiled. Thank you for that. Security cameras caught it. I gestured to the discreet camera in the corner of the room, one I'd had installed last week. Assault. I could press charges. Richard, Catherine turned to Dad. Are you going to let her talk to us this way? Dad looked at her for a long moment. You know, Catherine, I've been thinking about a lot of things. About how you've been advising me these past few years. About how Lily stepped back from the company right after we got married. About how Marcus rose so quickly. What are you saying? I'm saying I think you were involved in Marcus's schemes, in isolating my daughter, in trying to steal my company. He stood up. I want you out of this house tonight. You're divorcing me? Catherine's voice was shrill. After 10 years? No, but we're going to have a conversation about prenups and financial arrangements. And you're going to cooperate. Because if you don't, Lily will press charges against Vanessa. Won't you, sweetheart? I nodded. Absolutely. Vanessa started crying. Lily, please, I'm your sister. Half-sister, I corrected, echoing her words from my first life. And you made your choice when you got into bed with my husband. It wasn't like that. He seduced me. Did he? I tilted my head. Because my private investigator found hotel receipts going back over a year, jewelry purchases, plane tickets to Paris, all on Marcus's credit card, the one tied to our joint account. My money, Vanessa, he was spending my money on you, and you knew it. She crumpled. Catherine tried to defend her, but Dad shut her down. I don't want to hear it. Both of you get out. I need to talk to my daughter. After they left, Dad and I sat in silence for a long moment. I'm sorry, he said finally. I should have listened to you, should have trusted you. You're my daughter, and I let Catherine convince me you weren't capable. She's very convincing. That's not an excuse. He took my hand. Your mother would be ashamed of me. My mother. She died when I was 12, cancer, fast and vicious. Dad had fallen apart. Catherine had swooped in 2 years later, all sympathy and support. I'd been so desperate for a mother figure that I'd welcomed her. That had been my first mistake. Mom would want you to be happy, I said. I'm not sure I deserve it, he sighed. But I can try to make things right. Starting with the company, I want you back, Lily, as COO. Hell, as my successor. It's what I always planned. I know. I'd remembered this time. Remembered before Catherine had made me forget. Can you forgive me? I'm working on it. He squeezed my hand. That's more than I deserve. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. Marcus tried to contest the divorce, but his lawyer advised him to drop it once the full extent of the embezzlement came to light. He settled for the terms I'd drafted, which left him with nothing, in exchange for me not pressing criminal charges. He moved to California. Last I heard, he was working in real estate, barely scraping by. Vanessa went with him. They're not married. Apparently, the romance died once the money ran out. Catherine and Dad divorced quietly. She got a modest settlement, nothing like what she'd hoped for. She lives in Florida now, in a condo, and doesn't speak to any of us. Dad stepped down as CEO and handed the reins to me. It was time, he said, and I was ready. I was more than ready. The board voted unanimously to approve my appointment. I'd proven myself over those 6 months, implementing new financial controls, rooting out the rest of Marcus's fraudulent schemes, increasing profitability by 15%. Your grandfather would be proud, old Mr. Morrison told me after the vote. He'd worked with my grandfather for 40 years. You're a true Whitmore. I threw myself into the work. 16-hour days, constant travel, endless meetings, but I loved it. This was what I'd been born to do. I also went to therapy, dealt with the trauma of my first life, even though no one believed me when I said I'd lived it. My therapist thought I had an overactive imagination and deep-seated fears about betrayal. That's fine, I told her, as long as we work through it. And we did, slowly, painfully, but we did. I dated, cautiously, nothing serious. I wasn't ready for serious. Maybe I never would be. But I was happy, genuinely happy. For the first time in either life. 2 years after the divorce, I was sitting in my office, Dad's old office, the one with the view of the entire city, when my assistant buzzed. Ms. Whitmore, there's a Marcus Chen here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent. I almost said no, almost had security throw him out, but I was curious. Send him in. Marcus looked terrible. Thin, haggard, his expensive suit replaced with something off the rack. He'd aged a decade in 2 years. Lily, he said, and his voice cracked. Mr. Chen. I didn't stand up, didn't offer him a seat. What can I do for you? I need help. No. Please, I'm in trouble, financial trouble. I made some bad investments and not my problem. Lily, please, I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm desperate. Vanessa left me. I have nothing. I'm going to lose my apartment, my car, everything. I stared at him, tried to feel sympathy. found nothing but a cold satisfaction. You already lost everything, Marcus. 2 years ago, when you signed divorce papers without reading them. He flinched. I know I fucked up. I treated you terribly. I was greedy and stupid and you thought you could destroy me and walk away rich. I leaned back in my chair. Do you know what my life was like after you divorced me the first time? The first? What? I smiled. Nothing, never mind. The point is, you made your choices. You conspired with my sister to steal my inheritance. You embezzled from my father. You spent 3 years systematically destroying my confidence so I'd be easier to manipulate. And it worked. For a while. I'm sorry. No, you're not. You're just sorry you lost. Please, Lily, I'll do anything. There's nothing you can do for me. I have everything I want. A successful company, my father's respect, my self-worth. I stood up. You have nothing I need. So that's it? You're just going to let me suffer? Yes. I walked to the door, held it open. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Just like you let me suffer. Except you'll survive it, Marcus. You're not as weak as you thought I was. He stood there for a long moment, tears streaming down his face. I loved you. Once. No, you didn't. You loved what I could give you. There's a difference. After he left, I stood at my office window and looked out over the city. My city, the one my grandfather built, my father grew, and I would expand. I thought about my first life, about dying alone and broken in that terrible apartment, about the pain, the humiliation, the absolute destruction of everything I'd been. I thought about the papers Marcus had presented me with, the ones designed to strip me of everything. And I thought about the moment I'd signed them without reading, knowing exactly what I was doing. Thank you, I whispered to whoever had given me this second chance. The universe, God, fate, it didn't matter. Thank you for letting me get it right. My phone buzzed. Margaret Chen, my lawyer, and now my friend. Drinks tonight? You've been working too hard. I smiled and texted back. Absolutely. I have so much to celebrate. 5 years after my rebirth, Whitmore Industries was worth $3 billion. We'd expanded into new markets, acquired 2 major competitors, and revolutionized our manufacturing process. I was on the cover of Forbes, named one of the 40 under 40 business leaders. Dad was semi-retired, spending his time on the board and golfing. We had dinner every Sunday. Our relationship wasn't perfect. There were still scars from those years when he'd believed Catherine over me, but we were working on it. I bought a penthouse apartment downtown. Not the one I'd shared with Marcus. I'd sold that immediately after the divorce. A new one, all mine, decorated exactly how I wanted it. Modern, clean lines, full of light. I dated occasionally, had a few relationships that lasted a few months each. Nothing serious. I was busy, focused on my career, and honestly, I liked being alone. Liked coming home to my empty apartment and knowing no one was there to criticize me, control me, or manipulate me. I was happy. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon in March, my assistant buzzed again. Ms. Whitmore, there's a woman here to see you, a Vanessa Chen, formerly Vanessa Whitmore. I froze. Did she say what she wants? She says it's personal, family matter. I should have said no. Should have had security escort her out, but again, I was curious. 5 minutes, I said. That's all she gets. Vanessa looked even worse than Marcus had. She was gaunt, hollow-eyed, her clothes cheap and ill-fitting. She looked like she'd been crying for weeks. Lily, she said, and her voice was hoarse. Thank you for seeing me. You have 5 minutes. I need help. Mom needs help. She's sick. Cancer, stage 4. The treatment is experimental, not covered by insurance. It costs $500,000. I don't have that kind of money. I don't have any money. I felt nothing. I'm sorry to hear that. Please, I know I don't deserve your help. I know what I did was unforgivable, but she's my mother and she's dying. Catherine made her choices, I said evenly. She chose to help Marcus steal from my father. She chose to poison Dad against me. She chose to side with you when you fucked my husband. Actions have consequences. She's dying. We're all dying, Vanessa. Some of us just get there faster. I stood up. Your 5 minutes are up. How can you be so cold? She raised you. No, she didn't. She moved into my house when I was a grieving teenager and systematically destroyed my relationship with my father. She didn't raise me. She used me. That's not true. Isn't it? I walked to my desk, pulled out a file. I have emails, Vanessa, between Catherine and Marcus, planning how to isolate me, how to make Dad doubt me, how to steal my inheritance. They started plotting before the wedding, before Marcus and I were even married. I threw the file at her, papers scattered across the floor. She never cared about me, neither did you. You both just wanted what I had. I sat back down. Now get out of my office. Please, Lily, I'm begging you. I'll do anything. There's nothing you can do for me. Just like there was nothing I could do for you 5 years ago when you were fucking my husband in my bed. She fell to her knees, sobbing. Please, please, I'll die without her. She's all I have left. Then I guess you'll die. I pressed the button on my desk. Security, please escort Ms. Chen from the building. 2 guards appeared. They lifted Vanessa gently but firmly. She was still crying, still begging. Lily, please. She's your family too. No, I said quietly. She's not. After they removed her, I sat in silence for a long time. I didn't feel guilty, didn't feel sad, didn't feel anything except a profound sense of rightness. In my first life, Catherine and Vanessa had watched me suffer without lifting a finger, had in fact contributed to my suffering, had celebrated my destruction. Now it was their turn. I went back to work. Catherine died 6 weeks later. I didn't attend the funeral. Vanessa sent me a letter afterward, bitter, angry, full of recriminations. She called me cruel, heartless, inhuman. Said I'd murdered her mother just as surely as if I'd held the gun. I read the letter once, then burned it. 3 months after that, I heard that Vanessa had died too. Overdose. Intentional or accidental, no one was sure. I didn't go to that funeral either. Dad asked me about it gently. Are you okay? I know that despite everything, they were your family. They were never my family, I said. You're my family. The company is my family. Everything else is just noise. He nodded, understanding. 10 years after my rebirth, I stood on a stage at a business conference in Singapore, accepting an award for Businesswoman of the Decade. The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. I gave my speech, gracious, humble, talking about my team and my vision and my commitment to excellence. All the right words. Afterward, at the reception, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 25, and she had that desperate look I recognized all too well. Ms. Whitmore, I'm sorry to bother you, but I read about your story, about how you rebuilt Whitmore Industries after the embezzlement scandal, about how you overcame your divorce and family betrayal. She took a shaky breath. I'm in a bad situation. My husband is controlling, manipulative. I think he's stealing from me. And my family doesn't believe me. They say I'm being dramatic. I looked at her for a long moment, saw myself at 25, broken, scared, alone. What's your name? Amy Liu. Amy, do you have a lawyer? I can't afford one. I pulled out my phone, typed out a quick message. I'm texting you the contact information for someone who can help. Tell her I sent you. She'll take your case pro bono. I can't exit. Yes, you can. Nancy Wellman, I met her eyes. Here's what you need to know. They want you to feel helpless, to feel like you have no options. But you do. You always do. You just have to be brave enough to use them. How did you do it? How did you fight back? I smiled. I signed the divorce papers without reading them. His lawyer called screaming. She blinked. I don't understand. You will. I handed her my card. Call me if you need anything else. And Amy, don't let them break you. You're stronger than they think. She clutched my card like a lifeline. Thank you. After she left, I stood on the balcony overlooking the Singapore skyline and thought about the strange, impossible journey that had brought me here. 2 lives, 1 death, 1 rebirth. In my first life, I'd been destroyed by people who claimed to love me. In this life, I'd destroyed them first, and I didn't feel guilty, didn't feel cruel, felt only a deep, abiding satisfaction. Justice, I'd learned, wasn't about being nice. It wasn't about forgiveness or mercy or being the bigger person. Justice was about taking back what was yours and making sure the people who hurt you could never do it again. I'd signed those papers without reading them, and in doing so, I'd reclaimed my life. That was worth more than anything Marcus or Vanessa or Catherine could have ever taken from me. I smiled at the city spread out before me, glittering, vast, full of possibility. This time, I whispered to the wind, I won. And I had. Completely, utterly, irrevocably, I'd won.